everyone. Welcome to this week's Fireside Creators. I am your host, Reverend Dr. Sherry Palace. Tonight, we have a full panel again, and we are chatting about Pope Francis's legacy. What were his strengths, his weaknesses, and what we hope to see from the next Pope. Please remember to keep all comments and questions related to the show topic and that this is a safe space. Thank you for joining us. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe. Thank you for welcoming us into your homes and joining the conversation. I appreciate you all. Okay, let's meet our guests and become more loving. Where's my screen? There it is. Ana Garcia Lucas was born and raised in New Mexico. She is a mother, wife, veteran, and a survivor. She earned her MDiv at Episcopal Divinity School and Bexley Seabury Seminary. My mouth just stopped working. She's in the middle of her Lutheran year at the Pacific Lutheran Theological Seminary. She is a Reformed Roman Catholic, spiritual mystic, usually a heretic, a lover of coffee, music, green chili, and jokes. Welcome, Ana.
Hi, everybody.
I think we need to update your bio. I think we need to update.
I'm a computer, but that's about it. Everything else is older. So
Okay. Our next guest is Ashley Lavendier. They were born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia, to deeply religious parents. Ash had nothing come easy. A fierce go-getter, Ash holds passion for intersectional advocacy. As a Reformed Roman Catholic and spiritual mystic, one saying holds strongest. If the first door, oops, I forgot to change it. Sorry. I haven't done this before, evidently. One saying that holds strongest, if the first door isn't open, ram it down somewhere else. Wow. Come on, cooperate, stream. I can't add you. Why can't I add you?
Getting ready to ram down the doors.
Right.
That's what we'll say.
Right. I don't understand. I can't add her. Him, they, sorry, Ash. I'm fucking up all the pronouns so early. I don't know why. Wait a minute. Ash, can you sign out and come back? Because I can't add you at all. As soon as you sign out, I'll be able to add you. The glories of a live show. Okay, next we have Tim Warren, but he isn't here yet, so I'm hoping he's going to pop in. Oh, what were you going to say, Ana?
But I do like while she's working and this on his way in, I so appreciate that they were Reformed Catholic and spiritually mystic. We've been friends for quite a while, so it'll be good to virtually meet face to face. And
you guys haven't been on a show before together?
Online. Not together, no.
Okay.
There they are.
Let's see. There we go.
Yay! It worked. Woohoo!
Okay, let me fix this. We'll introduce Tim when he comes on. Hello. So I'm so glad that we are talking about this. I was telling Ash before the show that I have been very overwhelmed. But this came to mind over the weekend, and it was like, that's something I want to talk about. It's not something that I expected to want to talk about. I didn't think he was going to die so soon, first of all. But what really shocked me was the vitriol around his death. And I mean, the right, the religious right, has been going after him for years. It's actually in my book. Let me read you what I had. Walking in constant love is hard enough, but sometimes when trying to be compassionate and godly, it triggers others. When someone fearful witnesses the strength of love, they can become enraged, making the commitment to peace even more challenging. The proof of this is in the uprising against Pope Francis. He opened his heart and the doors of the church to people who, for centuries, were considered unworthy. He took the stance of who am I to judge and was charged with heresy by dozens of Catholic scholars and clergy. And when I saw people cheering his death, people slandering him, I was repulsed. I was absolutely repulsed. Some things did come out through those conversations that I was unaware of, but I had held him until these things came out as almost a person of perfection if he was looking for love. So coming from that stance, where do you guys stand on everything? Anna, you first.
Well, Catholic for the first 25 years of my life, being scarred by the Catholic Church of the 60s and the 70s.
Let me stop you. Let me stop you. I can barely understand you. Maybe close some windows on your computer. You sound like you're underwater.
I feel like I'm under, so that's not.
Yeah, me too, actually.
It's my Auckland accent.
Yes.
Growing up Catholic with a lot of it with and going through that and what it was, just knowing that God was so angry at everybody. Women were everybody else was everybody perfect for scum. Catholic Church when Francis came in, so there was a lot of, I don't believe anything he says. I don't believe he says. And then something else right that he did take. There was the tiny piece of Catholic within my being, and they said, "Oh, maybe something's changing." And then you have both the book and the movie came out last year, and then this happened. It's kind of, it's almost like reflection of this is how him as the Cardinals did in the movie and the book Conclave. This is how the conservatives, right wings, all those who are everybody else is may have saw him. What struck me was his absolute his humility, giving up the fancy stuff, giving up where he was, how he dressed people, how he moved towards the children that rushed up to him, giving them maps. And that started a little bit of my heart. I am grateful for changes and the little seeds that he was able to put in there. I am grateful for his South American roots. And the world hates different, right?
Girlfriend, I need to stop you.
Like you said. Oh,
I need to stop you. I was hoping that people could speak. Could speak the mumbled on the internet, but Michelle is saying she can't understand you at all. Would you mind signing off and coming back in? Okay. So sorry. You know, again, live show. Okay, Ash, tell me what you think of Pope Francis, the former Pope Francis.
So the big thing I remember about him was when he was first, I don't know if sworn in is the right word. I don't know. But
right.
when he first came in, I believe I was like, I'm trying to remember where I was. I can pretty much almost remember this clearly. It was my sophomore year of high school, and I was in my like textiles art class, And we just so happened to have it on TV because, Catholic high school, that's what you do. You put it on TV while we're working on our stuff. And I just remember looking up and I was thinking to myself, okay, this is a big deal, because I didn't really, I vaguely remembered it when Benedict had come in after Pope John Paul died, but I was 8 back then. So I barely remembered that one. But the one from when I was in high school with Pope Francis, I specifically remember looking up at the TV and I was like, I wasn't old enough to understand it when Pope Benedict came in, really. But I was just remember thinking to myself, like, okay, I don't know why this is coming to me, but this is going to be interesting. And I didn't quite understand why I thought that until I started questioning myself, and eventually came out after I graduated. And then I remember thinking back on what I was thinking that day. And I had a conversation with my mom. We had the whole debate of, oh, well, the Catholic Church is never going to change. And I remember thinking to myself after that conversation, I was like, oh, really? With who we have, I would watch your words. And, I just had that feeling of he's going to make you eat your words. And
it has changed, though. The Catholic Church is constantly evolving.
Right.
Historically, for the worst. We think of Anna's back, and Tim is supposedly signing in too. Let's see. Fingers crossed. Talk to me, baby. Anna?
Test 1 2, test 1 2.
It's still kind of
yeah.
I can to the phone, and that might a better option.
Okay. Yeah. Right. That was clear, but
Okay.
or maybe a different browser. The beauty of a live show. Everyone.
Okay. I can press.
Tim is supposedly coming on too. So this is just one of those shows. Yeah, historically, the Catholic Church has committed atrocities, and I detail a bunch of them in the books, even to what would seem the most benign is misconstruing Mary Magdalene as a whore, and only benign because I don't think anybody was necessarily killed over that. But Francis coming in, and I was raised as a Protestant, so I was always skeptical, and brainwashed against the Catholic Church because of so many different reasons. It wasn't a real religion. And that really came out when Francis died, about how they were saying that he was demonic, and, there was a false worshiper, and all of these things. And the religious right just cheered and cheered. And I'm like, this is over love. This is over, him welcoming people into. There's Tim. Hi, Tim.
Hi, I am so sorry.
It's okay. It's just one of those shows. Anna is been bouncing on and off too. So
okay. So sorry.
That's okay. So I was just talking about historically the problem with popes, and all of the bad things that they've done. But Francis, let me interject this here. Let me interrupt myself. When this was going on, I actually had a comment from Gwen Fry. I hope she doesn't mind me using her name. I probably should have asked. But she came on to the thread and said, do not glorify Pope Francis because he said I was an atomic bomb as a trans person. I immediately got all flustered and I'm like, he would never.
Right.
Went Googling, and in fact, he had said that trans people were the equivalent of a nuclear weapon on society. So I also don't believe that any person, any human that has ever walked this earth is perfect. Christians will disagree with me, obviously. But, even I caught myself elevating him to that point, and being really disappointed when I found out there was some systemic bigotry still left in his life, things that he wouldn't turn over. And of course, I questioned, what is he hiding in his closet, other than the standard Pope wear and costumes that they wear. But it was really interesting to be so open towards the LGB community, but so shut down towards the trans community. It was shocking to me.
The thing is, though, he was an old man from Argentina. So culturally, he's raised in a different way, and he's Catholic. I mean, it's like, you don't become Pope by being the most open-minded person in the world. But even in the gay community, there's an anti-trans sentiment.
I know.
And I run into it all the time, especially gay men. Gay men get freaked out over the idea of trans women. However, they don't have the same response to a trans man.
I know. Patriarchy in full form.
Exactly. I view Pope Francis, like myself and all of us, we are a product of the culture in which we grew up, and we will spend our whole lives trying to undo it.
Right.
So,
I just thought it was odd to be opening to lesbians, gays, and bisexuals.
Yeah.
But not to trans, to actually, be opening, who am I to judge, and be so loving, but then be so resolute towards trans people. It was just,
if gay people can't accept trans people, we're expecting straight people to accept them.
True. I mean, when I first started really hanging around a lot of gay people, I was appalled that there was so much infighting. I was like, don't you think you should be protecting yourselves? And especially towards bisexuals, because, like people of color, well, they're not really,
Right.
But okay, so back to what he did good. The LGB, let me stop myself there. Right. LGB growth, divorced women were allowed to have communion again.
Yeah.
What else did he do in his tenure?
I think he reached out to the Muslims and people of other non-Christian.
He did, yes.
Which he was the first Pope to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And he did have a luncheon for transgender women.
Did he really?
Yeah, and I don't remember the details on it, but I think he was trying to reach out the best he could, considering he was a South American, old guy.
Well, he dated before becoming a priest.
Yes.
Which I thought was awesome.
And he used to be a bouncer at a club.
Yeah.
And he was into hard rock music. So, I mean, he's a contradiction in himself. And I think he recognized that,
Ash, what do you think? What did he do that enlightened you?
Well, I remember specifically when, like, as I said, when I was in high school, when he came in as Pope, I remember specifically around the time I came out, he made that "Who am I to judge" comment. And I kind of full-blown ran with it at that point, because as I said, I had just come out to my family, and my mom was going all kinds of weird about how, like, oh, if, are you sure? And are you sure you're blah, blah, blah? And my dad made his comment about, oh, if you marry a woman, I'm not coming to your wedding. And I'm like, oh boy. And then I remember I used Pope Francis's "Who am I to judge" comment quite a bit in the first few years after I had come out. I kind of used it on them as a little bit of a leverage of like, okay, this may, not be the whole story, but if the Pope can say this, then y'all can be a little bit more open-minded.
Right. Right.
But then we end up getting into a fight of, oh, well, that's not what he meant by that. And what do you think he meant by that? And I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
No, we do know. Who is he to judge? That's what Jesus said.
Correct.
We know exactly why he said that. And his commitment to love is why he was declared a heretic. I mean, it's insane. I mean, I have said for years, you know, when I first started going into being a public figure, you know, and trying to get that platform, nothing, absolutely nothing pissed off people, Christians, more than love your neighbor.
Yeah.
It was the most response I would ever get. And I'd be like, no exceptions. And then there'd be 150 responses of all of these exceptions.
Yeah.
And it was like, you know, I could say it's a beautiful day today. I could have even said Gaza deserves it. And they would have been like, yes.
Yeah.
But to say, love your neighbor, no exceptions, incited so much. And I think Pope Francis was the embodiment of that. We really saw that come out.
Definitely, for sure.
And one thing, I found the reference. Pope Francis in November of 23 met with transgender women at a lunch, but then in 24 he met with some transgender people, and it says here that actually it became kind of a regular thing for him to meet with.
Really?
So I think he kind of pulled Obama thing on us. You know, Obama at first did not believe in gay marriage.
Right.
But then he says, my kids talked to me and I realized I was wrong.
Right.
You know, I can take a leader who's willing to say, I was wrong.
That is a leader.
Yeah.
That is truly. Hi, Anna.
Hi.
And she's, oh, you're frozen, but okay. I can hear you. Or maybe I can't.
I don't
And
know
we're like,
what's going on.
oh, there you go. I can hear
I'm
you now.
here.
Okay.
Okay.
So we'll let you get set up.
here.
So
I'm good.
good. The other thing,
Kim, go ahead.
the other thing that really upset me, and this is something I've had a problem with for years, again, it's in my book, is equating his death to a sin or a crime or a punishment. Like Marjorie Taylor Greene came on and said something to the effect of, he got his final due. He's being judged now with glee. Again, just so vile.
And to be clear, she didn't name him.
Everybody knew.
But yeah, you know, it was kind of like everybody's reading, and she sure didn't come back and say, oh, no, that's not what I meant.
Right.
You know, yeah. So, no, she's just evil and mean.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, even Franklin Graham, I mean, all of the religious right came out and was just dancing on his grave. And again, you know, when it's supposed to be based on love, I mean, we have this conversation every week, right? How do people who claim to follow Jesus be so atrocious and so hateful? But to really see it in live action, when it, you know, in real time as it's happening, as people are mourning, I mean, it shocked me. It disgusted me, but it also, I didn't think I was shockable anymore. And evidently I am.
I even saw posts from Catholics, American Catholics, who took the opportunity to bash the Pope. And what it is, it's just, I believe American Christianity generally is apostate.
Yeah. It's
become a nationalistic, American culture movement. It has nothing to do with what Jesus taught.
No.
The example he gave at all. You know, it's
right.
Of course people say, oh, but we're not all like that. Yeah, well, enough of you are to make you all look like jerks, you know. So
that's just like the not all men. No offense, but yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Anna, talk to me, beautiful.
Okay, I'm still frozen. Is my coming across okay?
No.
No.
I mean, we get some words, but I guess people can't understand decoding the water.
Yeah.
They think that he was evil. It was something to be celebrated. Yeah.
Ash, may I ask, what is your faith tradition background? Are you from a Catholic background or?
So I grew up Roman Catholic.
Okay.
also very, very deep into the whole, knowing who the Pope was. I remember actually very vaguely, I was about 8 or 9 when Pope John Paul died, and I remember exactly what I was doing when I heard about it. So I grew up very, very staunch Roman Catholic. Still am, but kind of more in the like liberal, like under Dignity USA type
Right.
Roman Catholic that actually, and actually goes to church and actually follows the teachings of Jesus, which kind of pisses my parents off.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's
How dare you follow Jesus?
I know, right?
right.
Yeah.
So basically I kind of not flipped the way I view my religion, but kind of I really went deep into it. Like after I came out to my family and they're like, oh, well, if you marry a woman, I'm not coming to your wedding and blah, blah, blah. Really had like this kind of big faith crisis per se of like, how am I going to do this?
Right.
Because like, I know there's a way, but I don't know how. And I had to do all of that looking and all that lifting on my own while my parents were actively telling me there is no way.
Yeah.
So basically still technically Roman Catholic, even though I don't go to my parents' church anymore. The church that I go to, one of the branches is Dignity Chicago, which I can't get out there very much because Chicago is kind of far from me. But the other church I go to pretty frequently online is more like a Christian Catholic kind of deal. But it's basically like I still have the beliefs of a lot of the stuff that I grew up with, but without the hatred that I was taught with it.
Right.
Right. I mean, that's part of the deconstruction, right? Is to
Right,
really sift through and dump all the bullshit.
Right.
And I think that's one thing I liked about Francis was he was not dogmatic in his black or white. He saw the grays in between. He saw and was elated in the rainbow of our world, meaning, a pun on LGBTQ, but also, the differences that arise in the diversity of us all.
Mm-hmm.
So
he came out and said that because he's liberation theology, like I am.
Right.
So that automatically puts us at odds with, half of our denomination. I'm
the Orthodox. Yeah.
You say liberation theology and they think you're crazy, because we're kind of radical.
Are you talking to the slaves?
Yeah. But he came out and said, one, he doesn't believe in a literal hell. And Catholics lost their crap over that one.
Right.
And evangelicals really couldn't take that. You got to have a hell. Where do you send all the evil people we don't like?
Right.
And then when he said that, basically all roads kind of lead to God. Mm-hmm. And they lost their stuff over that one. And he's very, in those ways, he was very kind of progressive. So if he doesn't believe in hell, which means then he believes in universal salvation, then even if he had issues, say, with the LGBTQ community, still he's like, well, but we're all still going to go to heaven type thing, So that creates a unique kind of a contradiction within himself. He's like, yeah, I see problems, but in the end, we all belong to God. So
right. I mean, him saying that being, acting as an LGBTQ person, acting that out was still sinful.
Why?
But that he was, I mean, it was like, wow, that's a razor thin thing to be walking on. Yeah. How can you say, I have we are having so many tech issues tonight. I have a very dear friend, and I don't want to, I have a feeling that you might be included in this. Never mind. Who has been celibate his entire life. He only came out 5 to 7 years ago. But because of the shame and the fear of actually sinning, he has never felt real love.
Oh, wow.
And to say that, that I think that's what Francis was, purporting. Like, okay, well, you can be gay, just don't act on it. And that is, I think, trauma driving. That is,
Yeah.
is saying that you don't deserve love because that would be sinning.
Yeah.
Again, I don't think that any human is ever going to be perfect. So I want to keep stressing that, and say that even I put him up on a pedestal that I shouldn't have. And I'm one that actually wrote a poem about not putting people on pedestals.
Yeah.
But I had so much love for his love that I wanted him to be that perfect embodiment of it.
Yeah.
And with things coming out of like, no, he said, all of this. I mean, there's a whole movement against Mother Teresa, right? Again,
Yeah.
for not being perfect. So I think anytime that we elevate anyone to perfection, they're going to fall. There's going to be dissenters, and rightfully so. No one should be labeled as perfect.
And too, I'm very suspicious of the internet grapevine, type thing. Like
Right.
I've heard some of the complaints against Mother Teresa, but a lot of times that information is coming from people in India, and India is a nationalistic Hindu nation.
Mm.
They don't like Christians, So I'm like, okay, how much of this is true? How much of it is exaggeration? Like with Pope Francis, okay, he struggled with accepting trans people, but yet he met with them.
Yeah, that was shocking. I got to tell Gwen about that.
Yeah. So I see a man, a fallible human, who struggled with what does it truly mean to serve Christ and all people.
At least he tried, right?
Yeah.
At least it wasn't any damnations, crusades, anything like that. He at least tried to be fully inclusive. He at least tried. But as I say in my book a dozen times at least, it's almost impossible to live a completely loving life because we're human.
Yeah.
We're totally human. We're going to have our tics. We're going to have our biases. But if again, the scales of life, if they tip on the side of justice and trying to be a loving person, then I'm all for it. I'm all for it.
There was one video of him when he was greeting the crowds, and a lady reached up and grabbed his hand and yanked it and pulled him off balance. And he took his other hand and smacked her hand and just gave her a mean look. And people went after him for that. And I'm like, the guy is old. He has balance issues. I think she strangled him. If somebody's yanking
boundaries. I mean, everybody can have boundaries.
Yeah, and he did come out later and says, I really apologize for that. I mean, it's like, he's human. I probably, if somebody yanked on me, I'd slap their hand too. It's like, let go of me.
Right. I mean, one of my biggest regrets was being in the hospital and being in pain and not being able to control myself.
Yeah.
And it's, having that fail when you're trying to, do something, but you're scared, you're in pain, you're, all of these things. Again, we're human, and to put something or demand that he not be, I mean, he is far from a heretic. For them to declare him a heretic is just complete and utter bullshit.
Yeah.
No heretic can ever be condemned for loving.
No, I think the true heresy is in the American church.
Right.
Because what they're putting forward, like J.D. Vance, when he misunderstood the Catholic teaching on love and concentric circles, and Pope Francis came out and said, no, that's not what that means at all.
Right.
Love does not. It's not concentric. It's just love. And all J.D. Vance could come out and say, then, well, I'm a baby Catholic. Well, then shut up and stop talking about the faith.
Yeah, I mean, the sinner's prayer at least says, that forgive me for my inadequacies, but they don't have any.
No.
Trump today said that he should be Pope.
Oy.
The man who has 2 Corinthians and cannot recite one single verse thinks that he is qualified to be Pope, and said that he would be better than any of the popes who have ever reigned.
Right. Because he knows so much about theology.
He is
Well,
the
he also said though that he is not only the leader of the United States, but leader of the world.
world.
And I'm like, okay, somebody needs to give him his meds.
Or a padded room.
Yeah. Take the phone away from him.
Right.
Yeah.
So, Ash, before we move on to the future Pope, do you have anything to add?
So I honestly really feel like his papacy really did bring like a lot to my life in a very fundamental time in my life, because as I said, he came in like right before I started my whole process of figuring out all my stuff in terms of being a Catholic and also being a burning closet case for 2.5 years, because that's what you do in a Catholic high school.
Right.
So like that all around the same time, and it was just very especially that "who am I to judge" comment just really stuck with me, like as I was in college and whatnot, figuring all that out. So yeah, I'm very much hoping that the next person is going to be somewhere along his same lines with certain things with that.
So I don't believe in the God appointment of the Pope. I do not believe it is a divine appointment. I do not believe that God directs any of that. But I am so glad that he was able to provide you with hope, because I think that's what the Pope is supposed to do, right? Or the Pope is supposed to give you hope in tomorrow, hope, not fear, like the church is, renowned for doing, but to truly give you hope in the love that we're supposed to be reaching for. And I think that for probably a couple hundred years, that hasn't happened, because the church has always been the fire and, hell and all of those things. And to give to hope to so many people and say, you too are loved, could be, not sure that it was, but could be revolutionary.
I
for sure.
think too with church in general, like with you, Ash, you as a gay person in the Catholic Church, so many people leave the church completely, and then they leave God, and they just dump it all. But like you're finding your way. Me as a gay man, I left the evangelical church. I went into the Episcopal Church and ended up becoming ordained in it. It was a fight though. Because I happen to be in a parish that was conservative. Lucky me, It's like, I'm in the most liberal Episcopal diocese, Los Angeles, and I pick a conservative parish to be in. And so, but we've overcome, we've held to our faith, and I know even though I'm not officially with the Episcopal Church anymore, Pope Francis even spoke to me as an Anglican, because we're kind of like the redheaded stepkids in the Catholic movement, and he even extended a welcome to the Archbishop of Canterbury. And he extended a welcome to, I don't remember her name, but she's the head of the German Lutheran Church. I think.
Right. Yeah.
So he met with the heads of major churches that have close relationship with the Catholic Church. And he's a bridge builder. And isn't that right? To me, that's what Jesus did, right? He built a bridge for us to be able to commune with God.
Well, and he also said just shortly before he died, he appointed a woman. I don't know the legalism behind the Catholic Church, so I'm going to misspeak, but she's like a bishop, someone, that, oh my God, a woman has never been appointed to this.
Right. It's a high administrative position.
Right. So it's not a leadership as like a priest or something, but she's as far as she can go up in the community.
Right.
And he said, with sarcasm and poking at everybody, if you want something done, have a woman do it. So even that was like, oh my God, this is the equivalent of Jesus pulling down the drapes in the temple, all of those things. Like, you just said that about a woman. And he's like, I meant it. He's laughing. And it was like, oh my God, I love that. I mean, so many people have turned away from the church because of the way the church has been. I think Francis, if anybody, kind of renewed their faith. Africa is blowing up right now in the Catholic Church. It's actually their biggest numbers that are going there. And it very well might be because of his acceptance and love and I always address the slave owner mentality in so much Christianity, and the fact that is being overcome in Africa, is seen by the numbers. Again, I think it's because of the hope that he gave to everyone.
Right. And even his funeral, he had a woman reading the epistle, appointed epistle reading. And I mentioned that to a friend of mine, and he's kind of like, "That's a big deal." I'm like, "Yes, that's a big deal."
Women.
It's at the Vatican. I mean, we have women in the U.S. reading, the scripture readings, but to have a woman read it at the Vatican for the Pope's funeral,
right?
And she didn't have an accent. She sounded American. I'm thinking.
I didn't watch most of it, but I don't know, so I don't know.
Yeah, and then there were a lot of African clergy in prominent positions. Not just out in the audience, but as crucifers, as thuribles, and like participating. And for me, I'm watching this because that's why I'm like, I want to see how integrated the funeral is, and I'm watching it like, okay, he got his last word in. Even he's dead, he's still poking at
the diversity was evident.
Yeah.
I remember thinking that at Benedict's, like, oh my God, a whole bunch of old white guys. And so that's a perfect segue into the next question of what should we be expecting in the next one. I understand a Black man is up for consideration, that he is likely to be in the top 3. He's a conservative. Supposedly he's anti-Francis, but would a person of color, even being conservative, shake things up in a good way?
My fear is that a conservative is a conservative, no matter which color stripe you put on them, and especially a conservative, because in the Anglican Communion, we're running into this problem because the conservative Anglicans in Africa are wreaking havoc in the Western Church, causing schisms. And so, I would love that it be a minority. We have a cardinal in the Philippines who is, I think he's a Jesuit, like Francis was, and he's also LGBTQ friendly, like Francis was, and he's kind of more liberation theology mindset. And I'd like to see him go in there. Because one, he's not Anglo, he's Asian, he's more progressive, and comes from a country that's a dominant Catholic country in Asia. And it would make the Filipinos would just be, that would be amazing for them if one of theirs could become, Pope.
Michelle agrees. Yeah. I did hear some rumbling that Rome wants an Italian to have control again. And then they also said that everybody in history who has been number 1 going in hasn't won. So it'll be really interesting when they start it next week. Yeah. There was a post on Facebook about, it should be a pink smoke instead of a white or a black smoke, and let's bring a woman on there. I would be happy with a trans person like Concave. That was just like, oh my God. That was so amazing. Reality tends to catch up to movies. So maybe not anytime soon. Right. And not anytime soon, but it would be really nice if the church grew like that too.
There is an Italian. His name is, it actually has pizza in his name. It's not a joke. I saw it and like, this is a joke. It's like, no, it's like Pizza Zuba or something like that. He's Italian, and he's a little bit more progressive.
Okay.
So my concern is they get somebody like Francis. A Jesuit would be awesome, because Jesuits are, they're more cranial. They're not as dogmatic. And the Jesuits were persecuted in the church at one time. Because they're the ones that are willing to rock the boat and challenge things. And then Jesuits also tend to kind of gravitate to things like liberation theology and social justice.
Realistically speaking, I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer, but doesn't the pendulum swing? So if we had a Jesuit, full LGB inclusive, wouldn't the conservatives rise up like we see with Trump now and pick someone ultra conservative?
Well,
I mean, I
no,
have that what we want to happen,
Right.
but is it the reality? What's the reality going to
Well,
show here?
Pope John Paul II was, for his time, kind of, I wouldn't say progressive.
Yeah,
but-
but I mean, relatively speaking.
Right. The Pope before him, which I can't remember, wasn't. And then after Pope John Paul, we got Ratzenberger, Benedict.
Who was ultra conservative?
Let's go
The
back
German.
500 years. Okay. And then we get Francis. So if, I'm sure there's bets in Vegas as who's going to be the next Pope. and
Right.
I think maybe it would be a safe bet to say they're going to go conservative again. I hope not. But
Ash, what do you think?
Honestly, I haven't been around long enough to really understand necessarily which way it's going to go. But I will say this. I have thought it through. My sister and I were talking right after it happened. She's like, hey, did you hear? I'm like, yes, but let's not tell mom and dad about it because it's going to be a mess. And I said, I'm honestly just terrified that we're going to end up with somebody super conservative.
Yeah.
Like you said, with Pope Francis being fairly liberal for the situation, my worry is that, as I said, I was young when Pope Benedict came in, but my worry is that we're going to get something like that again. And, especially now being an adult, it's actually going to, deeply affect me more than it already has, especially considering, there's all this stuff going on in the Roman Catholic Church in general. And it's just, I don't know. There's been progress made, but will it stay that way? And that's just a fear that I have with a lot of this, because I did look at the list and it does seem like a lot of them are super conservative.
Yeah.
So I'm not really sure how much of a, I hate to say it this way, but how much of a realistic chance any of those super liberal candidates would have.
Right.
And that's what scares me.
Yeah.
The one thing that we can rest in though is that Trump won't be on that list.
Yeah, right. Now, Francis appointed a majority of the cardinals who are in the electoral college. So this is something
Right.
it's a little bit different,
The conclave, not the electoral college.
Well, within it's the cardinals who do the election.
So it's actually called an electoral college also?
I'm not sure what their formal name is. Well, conclave is the one we hear all the time.
Yeah.
But it's not all cardinals sit on that.
Right.
It's certain ones. And the ones when I've been reading, a lot of them are ones that Francis appointed. And he was not appointing conservatives.
No, and he also wrote on 2 different letters, I understand, memos, letters, deeds, whatever that is called.
Encyclical.
To say that a certain priest was not allowed in.
Yeah.
So this priest evidently, I don't know what the crime was. I'm imagining assault. But Pope Francis tried to defrock him and then that didn't happen.
Yeah.
So he specifically wrote 2 memos saying, do not let this man in the conclave. Do not allow that, which I think also for the sexual abuse within the church, Francis did more than I think anyone has.
Yeah. I know he gets a lot of criticism, not only for the way sex abuse was handled, but also the thing with women's ordination and all that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think people understand that the Pope is not a dictator.
Right.
More than there's nearly 2 billion Catholics in the world.
Right.
And in every single country. So he's dealing with a church that's multicultural and multi-ethnic, and nothing moves fast.
Yeah.
In it, it's
right.
2,000 years of built-in obstacles. But
a lot of politics.
Yeah.
A lot of power.
At least we're not talking the Middle Ages when a Pope pissed people off, he just suddenly died. mysteriously.
or just killed a bunch of people
Right,
and
right.
tortured them, and all of those types of. Like I said, the Catholic Church does not have a friendly, kind past.
No, no.
The fact that Francis, it will be that memory of that, hopefully, and not one of weakness like he's being portrayed now. But really, a bend towards kindness and actually towards living like Jesus. I think that is remarkable. I didn't think I'd see it, but
Yeah.
he was there.
Yeah.
Okay, we are already at the top of the hour. Everybody, I am so sorry for all the technical issues, and I'm so upset that I didn't get to talk to Anna. I was looking forward to her so much, but we'll bring her on another time to talk about
And I apologize for being late.
Well, you should be.
Well,
It's
here's-
okay.
I will confess. I confess before my sisters that I have sinned, grievously sinned, and I was busy repainting my chapel, and I got so focused on that. Everything else, I forgot.
No, I feel it. I mean, Ash asked me yesterday, they're like, what time is the show tonight? And I'm like, what? It's tonight?
Right.
And then I'm sitting here before the show going, today's Tuesday, right?
Yeah.
No one's here. Am I doing this right?
Yeah.
So I get it. It was just one of those shows. I will always go with the flow, and I think it was wonderful the way that it was. But we are to close out. Tim, thank you so much for joining in and your wise words. Where can people find you, and any final words to give everyone?
Okay, I'm with my ministry is called St. Francis ISM, and we are found both on Facebook and YouTube. And I live stream a mass on Sunday mornings at 10:30 Pacific Standard Time. And those masses are saved on Facebook and YouTube as well, so people can come and view them at their convenience throughout the week.
It's a beautiful service. You guys should look.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And
Ash?
you
I'm
know,
sorry.
I know right now we're living in very challenging times in the United States, but yet there's a pushback.
Yeah.
Canada just voted in a liberal, and Canada is showing us how to run an election.
Right.
And it was a kind of a gut punch with Francis dying.
Mhm.
But the fact that he died on Easter Monday, I think was special in a way, And the last official act he did was tell Vance that he's doing it wrong, and I love that, And so I think he held on long enough to tell him that. So the ship is turning.
Right.
It's turning. It's we just have to keep pushing and not give in to despair, because it's really easy at times to feel despair.
I do hate that Vance was one of the last people he saw, so that does really bother me.
Yeah.
But yeah. Ash, any final words, and where can people find you?
Going off of the thing with JD Vance and him meeting with him, when I think about it, I just picture, kind of the whole Pope Francis getting the last laugh on him of kind of telling him, like, you're not a real Catholic and you're like a terrible person.
Right.
I think that there was some type of hidden joy in there for him, probably like a whole, tell off the person that's like causing all this chaos. So
right.
I think we definitely have that to hang on to, for sure,
Yeah.
with all this coming up. In terms of where can people find me, I'm on Facebook mainly. We definitely get into a lot of good conversations on there, so find me on there. It's a lot of fun in between, like, when I have to deal with defending myself, but that's a whole other story. But we have a lot of fun on there in between all that. So Facebook. Oh, and Instagram, but I'm on Facebook more. So.
Okay. Well, thank you both so much. It was a carousel of you guys coming in, but I think that added to the genuine and authenticity of this live show. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing about who I consider a wonderful human being, Pope Francis. Yeah. I'm going to put you backstage.
Okay.
Maybe. Right. I don't know. See if this thing works. Okay. Let's see. So that was a wonderful show. Like I said, I'm really bummed about Anna not being able to get on and give us some of her wisdom. I wish we could all decode what she was trying to say, because it was fantastic. Thank you so much for watching and joining in the conversation. Don't forget to check out my book and the follow-up course. The whole purpose is to create some real change through healing, community, and knowledge. If you like the show, share it and subscribe. Thanks again for watching. And as always, have a wonderful week and walk in love. Mwah! Bye.